Good afternoon and welcome to our weekly reading. I'm so excited to have you here today because today begins a year-long journey as far as the tarot readings and that are going to go. They will still be posted every Sunday, and I'm just excited because I felt that it was time to try something new. And this is going to be the first of this series. So hopefully we can keep this going for the whole year. And that'll be good for me because sometimes I do struggle with long-term projects. But I think because of the kind of the simplicity and the beauty of these readings that are going to be coming, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what's going on. And so there's, for the most part, it's going to kind of flow the same. But one of the things that's going to be different through the consistency of this 1 year process is all readings going forward are going to be 5 cards, unless something decides it wants to jump out from the deck, and then it will become treated as a beautiful add-on. So, I'm so glad that you've made it here. And I'm guessing that, like if you've made it to this reading, you're either a fan of the channel or something in your heart needed to hear today's messages. And so, there's something about being in a bit of an emotional, I don't want to say destabilizing, but vulnerable, I guess, state that it can unmoor us or it can make other things in life a little bit more challenging. So today, the spread that we're going to be using is all about heart spaces and spaces where the heart likes to be in order to feel safe enough to let the harder emotions and the heavier emotions go. So today's spread is an invitation to gently explore the spaces, both around you and within you, that can offer comfort, safety, and support while your heart finds its balance again. And so, you know, I woke up today, and one of the inspirations for today was I woke up today feeling extremely vulnerable, right? So and I think we all have times when, for no reason, our emotions just sit just right there beneath the surface, right? During these moments, we may feel a little sting of tears behind our eyes. There's a quiet longing to want to be held for a little bit longer or a little bit tighter by the people around us. And those are the times when, having a safe place to be and to sit in really does help to settle all of that kind of insecurity, right? So feeling unsettled and unsure of how to best care for ourselves can compound the problem a little bit more. So the reading for today is going to invite you to pause gently with your heart. It offers spaces to explore where comfort, support, and safety may already exist in your life, and where you may be inviting uh, to create these spaces to hold you, because maybe a space that you had is no longer available to you. So we're going to go through the 5 cards and see what's kind of coming up. The intention of today's reading is to help you find or create the safe spaces you need in order to navigate emotionally tender or challenging moments with greater support, comfort, and care. And the question that we're asking for today is, oh, there we go. We got a jumper. What are the safe spaces that you need to hold you right now? I'm going to go down and get that card. Ah, he'll come out later. So again, the question that I'm going to shuffle into the cards is, what are the safe spaces that you need to hold you right now? So if you're feeling that vulnerability, if you're feeling that emotional rawness, if something is starting to kind of come to the surface and is ready to be processed out, what are the spaces that you need to have in order to allow that to happen with ease? These are all cycles that we go through. And as I said this morning, I woke up feeling a little bit tender, kind of going around. And it's those moments where you look out the window and you just kind of want to cry because for some reason it's there and it's ready to come out. As I said, we will be using 5 cards in today's spread with our little jumper that we had. And there we go. Right. So one, two, three, four, five. There we go. Now, based on the question of what are the safe spaces that you need to hold you right now, the first card that we have, it sits in the middle. So this is the elemental spread. So it sits in the middle and it is the center card for that question. And so what this one is really looking at is how do you create safe spaces and supports when your heart is feeling vulnerable and raw? Part of the question to me is also like, do you do that, right? It's not always so much of how do you, but do you? And so giving ourselves permission, I think, is one of the biggest things that we need to be looking at as we're going through this spread. So how do you create safe spaces and supports when your heart is feeling vulnerable and raw? And here we have a beautiful card for this one. We have the Nine of Cups. The Nine of Cups is all about being with community that is going to support you, right? So when we're looking at when you need a safe place to land, for most of us, what we need is we need to have people around us or know that the people around us are safe to be emotionally raw and emotionally vulnerable with. And so when we're looking at how do you create these safe spaces and supports, it's by building and attracting people that will give you that space. If you're surrounded by people that when you're having an emotionally raw day, they're like, put it away. We don't want to hear about it. That's your issue. Having people around you that support you and say, I get it, you're having a rough day and that's fine without also having to go, well, how can I fix it? Right? You want to surround yourself with people and you want to surround other people with the same kind of idea, right? So you want to build communities where it's okay for people to feel off or for people to feel vulnerable, for people to have those emotions and for you to hold space for people at the same time, right? And so the best way for you to navigate through these times is knowing who are your safe people, who are the safe people that you can be with. And maybe it's just one, maybe it's a group of people. Maybe you need to have a couple of different people that are there at the same time. That's all how you're going to basically explore and experiment over the next little while. Like as you're going through this week, you're going to look and say, okay, so when I'm really feeling raw, when I'm really feeling emotional, who does my mind want me to reach out to? Who is it that I don't want to hear from as well, right? That's the other piece of it is as you're going through this, you really want to be able to say, this is my safe spot. And when I'm feeling this way, these are the people that I have less energy, I have less capacity to be around because it just makes things worse. It's very beautiful to be able to sit there and say that, like when you're feeling emotionally raw and vulnerable, that, it's the people, like spaces are important to have those spaces. And sometimes, if you're traveling, for instance, and you have that to know that there's people around that you can reach out to because you may not be able to get home to your little nest that you have in your closet. You may have to like Zoom or reach out to somebody to kind of be that tether, that touchstone. So now we're going to move north and we're going to move into the physical spaces. And so, where in your physical world can you find or create a place that allows your heart to rest and feel supported? And so, now we're looking at what are the physical spaces that when you're feeling vulnerable that you also tend to go to. And interesting here that we have the King of Swords in the physical spaces. And so to me, that's an indication that the physical spaces that you're going to are very logically thought out created spaces. They're spaces that have clear delineations and that the boundaries are very, very important. And so you might say, well, my safe space is my room. And when I go into my room and I shut my door, no one comes in, no one knocks. When I have this, like, and there's very clear contracts around the spaces because the King of Swords kind of to me is like a lawyer, a litigator, someone who's very much aware of how language can be used and misused. And so when you're looking at the physical spaces that you can find and create, the biggest thing is going to be making sure that whatever the space is, that it's very clear to other people what the rules are, what the limitations are, what the boundaries are, what the expectations are. Because that way, then you can have safe spaces everywhere, right? So if your safe space at home is your bedroom, then anyone who lives in the home needs to be aware of what it looks like when you're in there for a safe space, as opposed to I'm going in here to just rest, or I'm going in here to put the laundry away, or I'm going in here, to vacuum or to clean, right? That there's an understanding that the space itself holds a role. And if you're at work, there would be conversations with your employer, with the other employees to say, like, if I'm here and this is what you're seeing, then that means that, I need this space to not be full of, you know, anger or aggression or even just productivity, right? Like you might have, if I'm in the staff room, don't talk to me about a project, right? This is my decompression time. And sometimes maybe your car or some kind of vehicle or some kind of outdoor space, right? It makes no difference what it is. What the important thing is for you and what you're really looking to discover over this time is what are the words? What are the rules? What are the expectations that you have said around these spaces and how they support you? And that's really where you're kind of looking at clearing things up and understanding, okay, so if I have a physical space that I feel is my safe space and people keep coming in, how can I fix that? What is the way that I can express what I need at this time? Because when you're in that space and you're needing to be in that space, chances are you're not at the capacity to be able to express to people in a clear and unemotional space. So having those things set out ahead of time is really, really important to help to avoid any further emotional dysregulation that might come when you're already feeling emotionally vulnerable. So now we jump down to the bottom in the south area. And here we're asking, where might your energy need to be redirected or reclaimed so you can restore and nurture yourself during this time? And what happens is a lot of times when we're feeling emotionally vulnerable, our energy is still being directed outward, or it's still being directed at some other thing that then can actually become an energy drain. Because when we're emotionally sensitive, then we need to pull that energy back to us so that we can have the space, we can have the energy to go through the flow, to go through the emotion and to hold that space instead of having it being outside and inside and basically burning the candle at both ends in that sense. So here we have the Ten of Swords. And this is interesting. So we've got two swords that have come up. We've got the King of Swords and we've got the Ten of Swords. So this is a completion cycle, and this is like the head of the whole sword family. And so these are things that are really interesting because they, one, indicate that there's been work in these things, and now we're just basically putting the work that we've done forward, right? The king has gone through all the trials and all the tribulations and knows who he is and knows what he's worth. So when you use this in your physical spaces to say, look, this is what I know about what I need, and I need you to respect that, you're coming from a place of lived experience, but you're also coming from a place of authority. And now we're down in the south. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, is because we've got an air card in a fire position, meaning depending on how the air is being used, it is either going to stifle the fire of the south and the motivation and the desire to do things, or it's going to make it run out of control, right? Because, you're either feeding or starving the fire. And so when we're looking at where your energy might need redirection, this is a perfect example for that. Even without looking at the meaning of the card, what we're looking at is what you need to do right now is you need to find out where you're feeding the fire, which is probably externally. So it's taking your fire, it's taking your energy, it's taking everything away, and it's kind of raging out of control. And then internally, where you need it, you're probably starving. And so that's why you're feeling really fatigued. You're feeling really disconnected and irritable, right? Like those are all signs that you need to bring the oxygen back inside so that you can really give your system the energy it needs to process out these emotions and to re-regulate itself kind of thing. Now we add on the layer of the Ten of Swords, and it's quite possible that one of the things that's been going on is you might be focusing on a project or some kind of situation that you really want to finish and get rid of and get out of there. And the thought of sitting with your emotions is the last thing on your mind, or the thought of, having your emotions interrupting your flow and your process is probably also the last thing on your mind. And so you might be dealing with some frustration of, I want to get this off my plate and get rid of it, when by taking the time to be with yourself and to give yourself the space and everything that it needs, you'll find it'll resolve itself a lot faster. You'll get the clarity you need and you'll be able to finish off whatever it is that you need to clear out, whatever the motivation towards finishing is going to become cleaner and purer, and you're going to be able to get through it a lot faster as long as you're willing to pause right now, right? Because the Ten of Swords says the project is almost done. Whatever it is that you've been struggling through and fighting with, it's almost done. There's still some things to do, right? So pausing to give yourself space, to be there, to be present for yourself is actually going to help you find the conclusions faster because now instead of having your energy and your attention divided in many, many different places and ways, it's now going to be able to singularly focus in on yourself and your emotions. And the longer that you can spend with just that as your focus, the easier it will be to allow the emotions to pass because they get louder and louder the more that they want your attention. So when you give them their attention, they will pass a lot smoother and freer, and then you'll be able to put the energy back, and it's not going to be split. Now we're going to move over to the West, which is our place of energy, our place of creativity. It's our communications, community networks, and our intuition. And so we're asking what emotional connections or creative practices might help you gently express and move the feelings present in your heart. And here we have, interestingly enough, the Four of Cups. Now we have a cups in a cups card, meaning that what we're dealing with right now is very, very much emotional. And obviously, like the whole purpose of this reading is to identify the safe spaces and the gentle and comforting spaces that we can be in that are going to support our heart, that are going to support us being able to hold space for these emotions that are coming up, so that once they've flown through and they've been released, we have peace and we have this expansion into like just a sense of comfort and you know well-being, that the longer we fight with these feelings, the more they're going to be there. And so what we're looking at now is that, we started off with cups. We have the cups in water. So emotions are the key thing that's asking for our attentions right now. And having the Four of Cups in the West, where it is the water position, is really coming forward to say, hey, look at, you're longing for something. And there's something present here that needs your attention first. And it's creating a discordant energy within the system. And so it's time to really look at the source of the longing, right? Like, why is she gazing off for this cup when she has all of these here beside her? There's something in that longing that there's could be nostalgia, there could be some sadness, there could be like longing usually comes with this, I'm missing something, there's something that's not right, I'm feeling off. And what's going on right now is that there's something present right now that has created this distortion. And so it's important for her to, really be with this emotion and to really kind of sit with it. And what's interesting is with her, unlike some of the other cards I've seen, she's just sitting there with a smile on her face. So there's a knowing, right? And as the swan is going around with the symbol for Cancer, right? Like there is a knowing here that there's some emotional work that needs to be released, that there's something just out of reach that needs to be processed, that needs to be understood. And I really love how I'll put it a bit closer so you can see. But in the picture, like the swan is carrying the symbol of Cancer, but in her hand she's carrying the moon sign as well, right? So if you look at all of that and how kind of content she is sitting there. So what we need to do is we need to create spaces where we can just sit with this discomfort, with this longing, and see it for the beauty that it is, and know that as time passes, if we give it the space, it will reveal something that we may have missed before or that we are now ready to understand. So now we're going to go to the East, which is the final card, second to final, I will say, because we have our jumper. And now we're asking what thoughts, conversations, or boundaries might help you express your feelings and restore inner balance. And so here we have interesting, our first major arcana card is in the East, which is the place of new beginnings. And so the Hermit is sitting here saying, you know, the thoughts and the conversations or boundaries that might help you express your feelings and restore inner balance come from spending time alone, which is interesting because that's what this is as well, right? So if you take the time in the West to sit with your emotions, to sit with your need to just breathe and to kind of play with the patterns and to play with creating understanding, then when we get over to the West, what comes from that is going to be the understanding of integration. It's going to be the understanding of where we need to share our truth, where we need to shine our light, and how we need to create a really good, strong container around that. And because we're looking at spaces that we need to have, so if we look strictly at spaces that we need to have, that we need to cultivate for when our heart feels really, really raw, we need to have communities, right? If we're looking just at what the cards are saying are the best kind of containers that we have, we need safe communities to be in. We need to have containers that have clear delineation on the roles that they play and on the way people can engage with those physical spaces that we have set as safe spaces for us. We need to let go of worrying that things will never end and that we're going to be in these situations forever. We need spaces that allow us to gather proof and gather data that even the hardest and the longest journeys we've been on have eventually come to an end. We need spaces that allow us to feel the grief, that allow us to feel the longing, that allow us to feel that sense of offness or discomfort in knowing that maybe something's missing, but maybe nothing's really missing at all. Maybe it's just a feeling. And to have those spaces where we can just sit in the melancholy, sit in the lower emotional waves that we have, and be okay knowing that there's nothing to solve, there's nothing to do. And we need spaces where what we learn when we're alone is going to be heard and understood and accepted when we're ready to bring that forward and to be shared. So we need spaces that will honor the fact that we need to be alone. And sometimes we hold our secrets in our heart, and that when we're ready to talk and when we're ready to share and when we're ready to start a new journey or to move into a new path outside of these spaces, that we've had that safe space of being able to be with our own thoughts. And our jumper for today was the Knight of Swords. And so it's interesting here. I'm going to put him down for a second because we've now had two swords and two water. And I say that that's interesting because, and then we had the Hermit, who the Hermit is often an earth-based card. And so we have those cards, and then all of a sudden we have the Knight of Swords, who is a fire card. So this is interesting because we've got air that can feed fire. We've got water that will douse spot fire. And then we have Hermit that can also douse fire, but Hermit, if used well, can also encase fire. So if we're looking at the ways that the Knight of Swords is coming in and what he's adding is he's saying that right now, the containers that you're making need to be dynamic. These containers that you're making or that you're recognizing or that you're claiming for yourself, they need to serve multi-purposes and they need to be able to be containers where you can go and you can feel your energy being restored, where you are able to access them when you need them, and that when you go into these spaces, you're activating a certain sense of purification, right? Because fires are all about the purification. And so in these spaces, right? So when you're in that original space and he's there, right? He's saying, okay, we're activating a person space, we're activating a social space, then you need to make sure that who you're bringing in is helping you to, you know, control that fire. That they're not putting it out, that they're not sitting there and dousing your fire, but they're basically, I look at it from instead of having like pouring the bucket of water on it, you're throwing some water on some hot rocks, which is creating steam like in a sauna. And so there is ways that you can use that heat and that fire and that flame of the Knight of Coins to help soften the emotions so that they release naturally. And I like the idea of the sauna, right? Because when you're in a sauna, all of the impurities and everything from your body, it sweats out through your pores and it sweats out through your skin. And so the Knight of Swords is basically coming out and saying, hey, how do you want to do this? And you can look at that sweating out of these emotions, these impurities, as are you going to do it through a hot tub, right? Heat and water. Are you going to do it through a sauna, heat and air, right? There's a lot of different ways to do this. And then, of course, what I love is heat and earth is you definitely have like things like hot stone massages, and there's a lot of like hot mud and all this kind of stuff, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you're looking at how to add this extra layer into the containers that you're making. And so I hope that you enjoyed this reading and that you got some kind of insight into the types of containers that you need to be able to have to allow yourself to rest and relax and open up to any kind of conversation that's coming forward from an emotional based dysregulation kind of thing. And, like we get these these are cyclical, right? They'll come and they'll go. And right now, over the next few days, we will be going through a very emotional, um, unpredictable kind of energy that's going through the whole kind of cosmos right now. And it's important for us to be able to know what are the spaces that we have. And so you might identify with one space that was mentioned here, you might identify with all of them. And it's important for you that if something sang in your body while you were listening to this, that you really look to identify, well, what is it that's saying? Is it saying because I have a space like that and it's a reminder to go and use it? Or is it that that's a space that I need and how can I best create and cultivate it in my life at this time? So having said that, I hope that you enjoyed the reading, that something has landed for you, and I thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed the video and want to subscribe to the channel, as I said, this is the first reading in a year-long series that is going to be based around a lot of different themes. And so I hope you enjoyed this first heart-based, heart-centered theme that we had for today, and that you will come back next week and see whatever it is that we have, because even I don't know. These are going to be made kind of the day before the reading, so I'm always excited to see what comes up. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I will see you around the webs. Take care.